Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Powell, thank you for being here. Really appreciate you being here. Um, Look, I got to say, first of all, it was good to hear from the other side of the aisle that the Federal Reserve should not even be engaging in using its tools with respect to climate change or climate mitigation or whatever the case might be. The Fed, you guys have a big enough job as is. Adding anything like that to your job, I think will be wholly detrimental to the American economy. So I, for one, this morning am glad to hear that coming from the other side of the aisle. You've had a couple questions already on capital, bank capital, et cetera. Look, some of the current views are that continuous raises of bank capital will increase costs to our economy anywhere from $50 to $200 billion. What's your view of the current desire or mode of Vice Chair Barr to fully implement the Basel III capital standards?
Well, I think that's the next thing. Vice Chair Quarles was working on that. It didn't get completed for various reasons, but I think that's an international capital standard that we should go ahead and complete. As to the right level of capital, that's a discussion we're about to have.
Are you guys at the Fed? Are you guys kind of concerned about the fact that now it seems like the European regulators are starting to pull back from that? Like they're starting to think about capital standards being too much for European banks, and that they're starting to recede from what was, I assume, kind of a handshake agreement in years gone by.
Yeah, I'm not hearing that exactly. We'll be watching that carefully, though.
Okay. Overall, just with respect to capital, I mean, let's take a step back. Obviously, since 2008, 2009, we have, in my view, aggressively gone through this process of increasing capital standards and capital requirements on a Tier 1 capital for banks. In retrospect, do you think that's been a net positive to the overall banking environment, or do you believe it's been a negative to the overall banking environment?
I think it's been a net positive, and as I pointed out earlier, U.S. banks have competed very, very successfully through this period, despite what were pretty significant capital increases that we put in a few years back. So it really has led to a very strong, and also made it well through the pandemic period, I thought, and I think that was a pretty good test. So even though the government did do a lot to support the economy, still, I think that those capital hikes that we made in the last cycle come through looking pretty good.
Do you guys at the Fed, do you have a view of, I say you guys because I know you're the chairman, but there's other members as well. Do you have a view of the concern about community banking in the United States, or a lack thereof of community banking? It has been shrinking quite significantly over the past 10 to 12 years.
Very, very much so. It's a focus for us. We understand the importance of community banks, that they provide a different service and a really important service to smaller businesses and communities. And community banks have been consolidating for 30 years now. So it's really a secular trend as people have moved to bigger cities and things like that. But we don't want to do anything to move that along. We think that the world's not a better place with fewer community banks, and we try to keep that in mind in all of the regulatory and supervisory things that we do.
Do you think that federal regulatory policy, in part from Congress, has led to a supercharging effect of diminished community banking in the United States?
It's probably been a factor, but I do think there have been important demographic factors as well. And also having interstate banking. Interstate banking only became legal quite recently, and that also has led to consolidation. You can look back, though, look back 30 plus years, and you've seen a very steady decline. So I think there are demographic and other factors driving it, but regulation can fall as a fixed cost, which means that institutions need to be bigger, and I think that's probably part of the story.
Look, I don't disagree with your conclusion. I'm just concerned about the trajectory. I think just having larger financial institutions, larger banks overall, with a diminishing smaller community bank infrastructure is detrimental to lending to small businesses, mom and pop businesses. It also could be parochial. I started my career in community banking, so I saw a heartfelt situation. Last question, running out of time. The SEC has proposed a rule that would, among other things, require banks to segregate client cash held in custody. upending custody bank balance sheets, and by extension, the bank custody model. Are you guys at the Fed concerned about this proposed rule from the SEC?
The gentleman's time has expired. The chairman can
I'll
answer
respond to
in
that.
writing.